Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is that you inky savages are joining me for episode number 200 of the Penboy Roy Pentertainment Podcast. So, 200 episodes in the can. I appreciate you guys following along, and it's actually monumental for me. I don't know how to celebrate stuff very well. I don't know how to make a big deal out of things because I'm just not that type of person. I do have sentimental value towards things and objects and places and activities and stuff, but for some reason, when it comes to the podcast, it's one of my creations that I'm very proud of, and I appreciate everybody that was involved, past or present. But when it comes to like some kind of monumental like episode, I'm not really sure how I'm going to go about doing it. I was thinking about doing a giveaway. I think the giveaway that I want to do is I want you guys at the end of this episode, after listening to it, I want you to put in the comments what you think about the topic that I'm discussing today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a random comment, and the commenter that I pick is going to be the winner of the Gold Spot exclusive Sailor 1911 large Call of the Cthulhu fountain pen. I did a review on it in the past, about a month or so ago. If you want to check out that review, obviously feel free. I'll leave the link in the description below. But again, this giveaway will be in celebration of episode number 200 of the Penboy Roy Entertainment Podcast. For those of you who have followed along, I appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you follow along. Maybe I'll do something at 300. I don't know. Yeah, the podcast has run into hiccups here and there, technical and audio issues. I've been in the process of upgrading. As you can see in my background, I changed things around as well. But nothing's stopping me. I enjoy it. Life has gotten in the way here and then, and being consistent has been difficult. However, the podcast is something that I have a lot of pride in. I really enjoy doing it. Let me just sit up a little bit more. And it's not something I intend on stopping. It's definitely something I intend on continuing moving forward. So, I'm going to discuss a topic today, and it might be a bit on the, how do you say, controversial side. It might be a little bit on the side that might piss people off. I'm known to do that, especially if it's something that I guess maybe people know about, consider, but they don't really explore it. All right? And what I'm going to talk about today is Montblanc. Why all the hate? That's the question I'm going to pose. But then I'm also going to answer that question. But then I'm also going to debunk the very answers to that questions that I ask, or the reasons and answers and whatnot. So I do want to talk about Montblanc a little bit because I've had experiences with Montblanc, both positive and negative. The positive ones were very positive, and the negative ones were resolved in positive ways. So I'll talk more about that. But first, I just need to talk about my sponsors. Please check out Gold Spot Pens using the affiliate link in the description below. And make sure you use coupon code Stewie at checkout for an additional savings on most of the products on the Gold Spot website. Now, the sponsorship reads haven't been updated this week. It's one of the few times where I'm able to get content out faster than the sponsors are able to update the sponsorship reads. So I'm just going to talk about this pen here. I just did a review. This is the Opus 88 Mini Celestial Zodiac. This has recently become one of my favorite everyday carry fountain pens because it's pocketable, because it's like a blue sausage in your pocket. Take that for what you will. I love the way it writes. When you post it, it's super comfortable. It's not a metal pen, but at the same time, it seems pretty durable. I also love the artwork on it. The artwork is done by Tracy Marisoli. So if you're interested in this pen, it's $79, but you can save some money on it by checking out the affiliate link in the description below, as well as using coupon code Stewie. Also, Luxury Brands of America, they just shipped over a whole box of cool stuff. Man, check that out. I'm going to put out a video later, but they got some cool Waldman stuff. Oh, Le Bon. They sent me some Le Bon stuff. I swear, it's some of the coolest pens I've ever seen, particularly the Antique 2. It's like an all-brass pen, perfect for everyday carry, durable, but it also has a lacquer of paint on it, and it just looks really cool. There's also the antique one, the original antique. The whole thing is solid brass. The thing can take a beating. It has a number 5 size nib. I'm going to go more into that later. But those are my sponsors. I'll leave links in the description below. Just so you know, Luxury Brands of America is now the distributor for Le Bon without having raised the prices. Because our good friend Jerry, the employee of Le Bon who was handling everything, from what I understand, his health is taking somewhat of a little bit of a dip. So everybody please send prayers out to him. And because of that, he hasn't been able to handle everything on his own. And since he's not able to handle everything on his own, as he did, if you ever see him at pen shows, Luxury Brands of America worked it out so they can take over those duties and responsibilities, as well as keep the prices where they were. So oftentimes when products go to a distributor, the distributor has to jack up the cost so that everybody can make money, distributor being the middleman. They didn't have that before, but Bryce, being Bryce, was able to figure it out. He's an awesome dude. He's also a humanitarian who's always very compassionate towards people. So somehow they did it. I don't know the logistics. Maybe I'll get him on the show and talk about it. I had him on the show a couple of times before, but they did the right thing for Le Bon. Please check out the Le Bon line of pens. They're available also at Gold Spot Pens. Or you can just go directly to Luxury Brands of America and check out which inventory it is that retailers in the United States are going to be getting. Oh, they also wanted me to talk about the color vent, but I did that in the last upload on YouTube. Not necessarily the podcast, because the last upload I had on YouTube was the review for the Celestial Zodiac, which, by the way, I love. Check out that review. I'll leave that in the link. I'll leave that in the description, the link to that video in the description below. But let's just move on now to the topic. Montblanc. Why all the hate? So back in the youth of my fountain pen journey, I always found that whenever the name Montblanc came up, I was like a spiteful little resentful guy about it, right? I got to give you guys the disclaimer so I can talk freely. This podcast is not scripted and therefore will contain potty mouth words. So be forewarned. You have been warned. I messed that up. Now, on to the podcast. So, going back to what I was saying. In the early stages of my fountain pen journey, Montblanc wasn't the first pen on my list because I knew that Montblanc was a higher end expensive brand. I did have curiosities about Montblanc and wanted to know how they wrote and this, that, and the other thing. What's the big deal? Is it just the name, right? So as I was talking to other people along the fountain pen journey that I was on, they were around the same stage, maybe a little further, maybe a little bit newer. But they shared the same hostility and resentment towards Montblanc that I had. And at that point in my journey, the resentment was just because of the price. But we have to justify our resentment, even though we don't have a Montblanc, right? So we would look into it and research it, and we would find out that, it's injection molded, so they're just charging a lot for injection molding. And then we would look at Hugh Jackman using a Montblanc pen, and he was the poster boy for Montblanc. I think maybe before that, maybe that was after, I can't remember. But basically the point is Montblanc used a lot of big names to promote the brand. So getting a guy like Hugh Jackman to promote a brand, whether it was Hugh Jackman or not, I can't particularly remember at this moment in time, but whoever it was, it cost money to get them on board, right? So since it costs money, the price goes up. Then you have these boutiques that are held to like super high standards. That raises costs for overhead. But then you also have stores like Fountain Pen Hospital, Drum Ghouls. They have Montblancs, but they have to have the Montblanc set up just as Montblanc wants, right? So there's all these things that raise overhead costs and prices and etc. And at that point in time, Montblanc remains to be one of those brands that everybody loves to hate until they get their hands on one. And that's where I was. until finally, eventually one day, I can't remember what the occasion was, and I'm going to pull it out here. My beautiful wife ends up purchasing a Montblanc fountain pen for me. I think might have been a birthday or something. And I got the first Montblanc I ever owned, and that was the Le Grand 146 fountain pen with yellow gold trim. It's a piston filling mechanism. And by this time, I had purchased pens that were close to the price of the Montblanc Meisterstuck Le Grand 146. This pen, though, was kind of something that I held off on because I had already cornered myself. I had already said a dozen times here and there, they're just injection molded pens with a gold nib. It should only be half the price. Sailor has a pen that looks almost exactly the same, and it's half the price, and probably writes 10 times better. And that's true, and it's also not true. Sailor, yes, does have a pen that looks a lot like the Montblanc Le Grand 146, the Meisterstuck, and it does cost half the price of the Montblanc. And at the same time, it does write like a friggin' savage. But is it better than a Montblanc? I can't say it's better. In my particular scenario, it was preferable to how a Montblanc 146 wrote. So anyway, I get my hands on a Montblanc, the pen that I love to hate, the brand that I love to hate, because in the beginning of my journey, it was unobtainable because of the cost. I couldn't see myself paying over $150 for a pen. I couldn't see myself paying over $300 for a pen, let alone, at the time, $705. And this brand are tight. They are tight motherfuckers. They will not bend on price. They will not give discounts. They won't let retailers give the standard 20% discount, right? Like you see with a lot of other brands. A lot of other brands will have an MSRP of, let's say, $300. But with retailers online, in the US, you can get it for 20% off. And that goes across the board for pretty much all the retailers. Any retailers that violates that and advertises at a greater discount devalues the brand, and that brand will no longer work with that retailer. It's happened. Montblanc, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do. You cannot discount their pens. And then on top of that, with the exclusion of gray market dealers. Gray market dealers are people who somehow get their hands on Montblanc products, not from Montblanc, and then they just go ahead and sell it at discounted prices that Montblanc doesn't approve of. So that's what the gray market simply is. And then what ends up happening is a lot of times with those retailers is the warranty won't be covered by Montblanc. So you kind of are gambling there. So I don't know a lot of people who did that or purchased Montblanc pens through the gray market and got a huge discount and then had a problem and then it bit them in the ass. I don't know. But that's the risk you run when you're dealing with gray market retailers. But anyway, going back, every non-gray market legitimate retailer would not be able to discount the Montblanc pens. And they have to have a storefront, right? So the largest online retailer on the planet Earth, Goulet Pens, can't get their hands on Montblanc because they don't have an actual storefront. And if they don't have a storefront, they can't display the Montblanc pens the way Montblanc wants. But like I said, Montblanc seems to be the brand that everybody loves to hate until they get their hands on it. And that's definitely the case for me. I hated the Montblanc brand because I kind of forced myself into a corner by saying early on that I would never get a Montblanc. I'd rather spend the money on something else. If I had $700 to spend or $800 to spend, I wouldn't get an injection molded pen. I'd rather get a Homo sapien or something like that. And then time came for me to actually get a Montblanc, and when I got one, I was really excited. I was really happy. I filled it up. And then what ended up happening was like this psychological warfare going on in my stupid little noodle. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I really like this injection molded pen that cost about $705, maybe close to $750 because of tax. I really like it. On top of that, my wife got it for me for whatever occasion it was, so I like it even more. But I'm not okay with the fact that I'm liking it because of all the shit I talked about it before. So here I am eating my own words. And then I wrote with the pen. Now, Montblanc grinds are a little odd at times. For example, the Meisterstuck 146 that I originally got, this is an extra fine or a fine, I can't remember. And my eyes are so fucked up nowadays, I can't even see what it is. But I'm pretty sure at the bare minimum, it's a fine. But it wrote more like, an oblique, a medium to broad medium oblique. The downstroke would be a thin line, the cross stroke would be a thick line. It was weird. So I wasn't crazy about that. I like extra fine, I like fines, I like Japanese fines, and when it comes to Yovo nibs, I like extra fines. I like a fine line. And the fact that it was fine going down, but kind of broad going left and right, was a little bit of a turnoff, and I jumped on that reason to be like, aha, Montblanc. I have one because it's Montblanc, but it's not my favorite writer. It wasn't my favorite writer. But I almost needed some sort of a reason to justify my, I guess, wanting to continue to dislike it because of all the shit I talked about it before. So here I am with this Montblanc 146. No, it's not my favorite writer, but I also have pens that cost as much that not only weren't my favorite writer, but weren't good writers at all. For example, by that time, I believe I did have a Homo sapien, the Visconti Homo sapien. And at the time, the nibs were made of palladium, and they were still made by Bach. And man, those nibs were a pain in the ass. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't my favorite writer because it was very, very finicky. And that pen cost about as much, if not more, than the Montblanc. So, to me, however, the Homo sapien costing that much is more justifiable than a Montblanc because, yeah, Visconti has a name, but the Homo sapien is the Homo sapien. It has the basaltic lava. It's really cool concept. The hook lock safe, the vacuum filling system. There's so many things going for it that when you pay that much money for a Homo sapien and maybe it's quirky and finicky with the writing, you're almost okay with it. Almost. No, I'm not, but almost. I can live with it. But something is still hard for me to live with when it comes to paying $750 for an injection molded pen for a nice 14 karat gold nib that works. It works just fine. It never failed. As a matter of fact, the Montblanc 146 Meisterstuck had been inked up and then months later, during the course of a few months, not been touched. But upon uncapping and started writing with it, didn't skip. It didn't skip a beat. It just wrote. It just worked nonstop. Did it work exactly the way I wanted to? No. But it without fail worked. So it didn't become a regular part of use when it came to going to work and doing stuff here and there. And the reason why is because it's a Montblanc. It's super shiny and black and it looks really beautiful and everything like that, right? I didn't want it to get scratched because it was just so expensive, and it's a Montblanc and it's made of plastic. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just clean it out. I'm glad I have it. It's not going to be an everyday carry for me. I'm not an executive. I don't wear suits to work. And I don't see myself being able to take care of it with what I do because I kind of have a rough lifestyle. I'm just going to hold on to it because I have it. It's a gift. It's a Montblanc. Everybody should have a Montblanc at some point in their life. Boom. So I eventually later on got another Montblanc pen. And this Montblanc pen was this bad boy here, the Starwalker. And I think this one is really cool. I really like the Starwalker because it has the floating star. You know, I can't get it to focus, but it has the floating star on the finial. It's a cartridge converter pen. Obviously, Montblanc likes to tell you some bullshit, and they'll say, oh, yeah, you can only use Montblanc cartridges, but that's bullshit. Montblanc cartridges are international ink cartridges. You can also use a converter, no problem. Now, the story with this one was I went to a Montblanc outlet store, and it was on sale. Instead of being $600+, it was just over $300. And I'm thinking, you know what? It's a Montblanc store. So I bought the pen. I was real excited about it because at the time, black and red were kind of my colors. It was in my logo and all that stuff. And I thought this one really was me. At that time also, I had a severely bad habit of over-tightening anything and everything, particularly anything that screws on. So what I ended up doing was I would twist this cap on and then just go an extra quarter turn just to make sure it's snug. Eventually what that caused was the cap would fracture because the shape of the pen and you're over twisting it causes the rim of the cap to break. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why would this happen? Because at the time, I couldn't possibly understand the fact that over tightening shit would cause it to break. So I was really annoyed about it. I'm like, this was $300+. I am going to call Montblanc and make a stink about it. I did call Montblanc. I spoke to a person at Montblanc and they told me, well, listen, it's an outlet store. You are not entitled to any warranty. I said, bitch, that's not how shit works. I bought a Montblanc pen at a store that said Montblanc on it. And it's recognized by Montblanc. And then this cap just fractured because it's weak and cheap. And I paid a lot of money for it. I want this taken care of. And the person said, sure, no problem. We'll take care of it this one time as a courtesy. I said, great. I sent it in. They sent it back. All was good. No problems. Shortly after that, I learned, you know what? My OCD has got to take a back seat because this just happened to be a Montblanc this happened to, and it could happen to any other pen. It did. So what I ended up doing was I used the Starwalker for some time, and I noticed that even though that this was a fine, it wrote more like a thick medium. And that annoyed me, but I was glad that I had it. I'm adding to my Montblanc collection. Montblanc is cool. Eventually, I ended up getting a Montblanc, what's this big bad boy here? Le Grand Meisterstuck 149, the granddaddy of Montblanc fountain pens. Man, I'm like stacking them up after all that shit I was talking about Montblanc. But I like it. I love it. I actually sent this one to JJ Lax to get it ground to a realistic extra fine because that's what I wanted. Because when I first got the pen, the fine wrote more like a fucking lipstick tube. It's super broad. So then I started thinking, oh, you know what? All that shit I talked has validity to it because none of the nibs match what they say they are. The broads are like super broad, so that's right. Mediums are broad, and fines are mediums at best. I've never had out of the box a Montblanc that was a fine, right like a fine. So I had JJ Lax ground it for me into an extra fine, and now it writes like an extra fine, and I love the thing. I really do. Should I have had to go that extra step? Probably not. So that just added another reason for me to justifiably dislike a brand that I keep buying shit from, right? I even have wallets. I have a school bag. I have one of those crossbody fanny bags, it's like a half-size bag. And those I ended up getting because my wife and I are traveling on vacation, we would run across Montblanc stores, and a lot of times when we're on vacation and stuff like that, we're not looking at fountain pen stores. The closest thing is a Montblanc store. And my wife knows the brand Montblanc, and she'll offer, hey, do you want to check out the Montblanc store? And I'm like, of course I do. They got fountain pens. I go in there, and I would see something, and it would intrigue me, and I would end up buying something from there. So, as I was saying before, I have never written with a fine nib out of the box from Montblanc that wrote like a fine. That is, of course, until I got, where's my case? I don't know where I'm putting things down left and right. That is, of course, until I got the last fountain pen from Montblanc, and that is the Meisterstuck 146 Calligraphy Flex Nib. Now, I did a review on this pen. I love this fucking pen. The Flex Nib is fantastic. Is it the wettest noodle out there? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, if you compare it with a Scribo Feel the Flex, Scribo is way wetter. But what I found with the Montblanc calligraphy nib was it was an extra fine that spreads out to a fucking paintbrush, and the ink flow keeps up. Very little railroading. This pen I also bought in France when I was on vacation with my wife. I love this thing. I really do. So why am I sitting here trying to dislike a brand that provided me with pens that work every single time? Not one single time did any of these pens railroad, hard start, have baby's bottom, be unreliable. Not one single time ever. They always worked. Now, with the first 146 that I ever got, did it work exactly the way I wanted it to? No. It's supposed to be a fine, but it seems to be more like an oblique. That's forgivable, especially if every single time it touched paper, it wrote. So why all the hate? Is it justifiable? And if so, why? So here's what I think. Why all the hate when it comes to Montblanc? I think it's because of pricing, right? That could be possible. But Montegrappa, they price their pens pretty high as well. Visconti, they price their pens very high. There's a lot of other brands out there that we, as fountain pen enthusiasts, will spend money on, and we don't hate them for that. So maybe it's because, I don't know, could it be the nibs not writing the way we expected it to or wanted it to? I don't think so, because there's a lot of other luxury brands out there that's pricing their pens in the same category as Montblanc's, and they don't write very well out of the box. For example, as much as I love Visconti, everybody has finicky Visconti experience with Homo sapiens that cost $800. Everybody's familiar with that. It happens to a lot of people. I want to say more than 5 people I know personally have had Visconti Homo sapien quality control issues with the nibs. So if that's the reason, then why isn't there the same level of hate for Visconti? I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's because it's just cheap injection molded plastic? I don't know if that's it either. Maybe if there is a reason, that could be the reason, right? It's just injection molded and it costs more than an acrylic pen. But if that's the case, don't buy it. Why hate it? Why turn it away? Now, you may not be like that and petty. I was. And I have to admit that the reason I was petty about it and a hater was because I didn't have it. And then after I had it, I kind of, like I said, shit talked so much, I have to kind of stay with the hate. But the truth is, where I'm at now in my life as a grown adult, as well as a fountain pen enthusiast, is I dislike the fact that it's marked up so much in terms of cost. The resolution to that would be simply don't buy it. But the fact of the matter is, I can't live with that. I do want to buy it. So I have to live with the cheap injection molding. And secondly, I say cheap because injection molding is associated with the cheap. Who knows? It might not be cheap for them. But dollars to donuts, if I had to guess, the cost of the pen to be made is probably really, really, really low compared to what it's marked up to. But guess what? That's their business model, and it works for them. It works so much that a hater like me ends up with 4 Montblanc fountain pens. Oh, by the way, and a fucking pencil. So Here I am eating my words like a 10-year-old eating cereal on Sunday morning. And here I am trying to justify this bullshit hate that I have for the brand, which I actually don't anymore, because once I kind of psychoanalyze myself, I realize I don't hate it. I just have to accept the fact that I was talking shit before because I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. So, but going back, what is the reason people out there cast off the name Montblanc? And I personally don't think it's because of the injection molding. I don't think it's because of the writing experience, because people have had worse writing experience with brands that they love. I don't think it's just because the pens are expensive, because there are pens out there that cost as much as a Montblanc, and we love them, and we don't hate the brand because it costs so much. I think the reason is something I've talked about in the past, and this is where I would like you guys to comment and give me your opinion. Comment in the description below. And like I said, I'll pick a winner, and whoever it is that I pick from the comments, you'll get the Sailor 1911 Large Call of the Cthulhu fountain pen, courtesy of myself and Goldspot Pens. So I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, going back, and I've talked about this before, I think the hate for Montblanc comes from possibly the fact that Montblanc is so incredibly successful in the pen market, not just fountain pens, but the ballpoint, rollerball, and fountain pen market. And they don't lift a goddamn finger to connect with the fountain pen community in any way, shape, or form. I'm right, at least in the fact that they don't lift a finger to connect with us. And you can tell because if you go onto the Montblanc Instagram page, they have like 1 or 2 follows. They follow 1 or 2 accounts, and those accounts are other Montblanc country accounts. At least the last time I checked. They don't follow people like Carrie Bullet Journal. They don't follow Vanessa Langton. They don't follow Brian Hulser with Kenro Industries or Carrie Yeager, Mr. Fountain Pen Day. They don't follow Brian Goulet. They don't follow Goldspot Pens. They don't follow Pen Chalet. They don't follow Dromgools. They don't follow Atlas Stationers. They don't follow anybody connected to the fountain pen hobby. They don't lift a finger to connect with us in any way, shape, or form. And they are doing just fine without us. It's almost as if the brand says, we don't need you. We don't care about you. We're going to sell these fountain pens with or without you. I think for me, if I had to dig deep into my noodle brain, I think that's what it is. I think it's the fact that I'm not needed, nor am I cared about by the brand, yet they do better, they do just fine without me, they do just fine without you, and they do just fine without the entire fountain pen community. All they need is the rich doctor, actor, lawyer, who knows nothing about fountain pens, to think, that would look nice in my pocket for this meeting tomorrow. And there's enough of those people that line the pockets of the people at Montblanc. And I think, for me at least, that is where all the resentment comes from. So, yes, I might resent Montblanc as a brand, but when it comes to the fountain pens, I can't find a reason to hate the fountain pens. As a matter of fact, except for the original 146 that my wife got me years ago, I kind of dislike the fact that it's an oblique. Is that the right one? Architect oblique? It's the one where you write a line down and it's thin and then across it's fat. I suddenly am brain farting. It's like a long brain fart that started, how long have I been doing this? 34 minutes ago and continued. I can't suddenly remember the name of that. An oblique is not it. Architect maybe? I can't remember. This head is taking a lot of blows. But it didn't write exactly as a fine, and it didn't write exactly how I wanted it to. But that's a sin that pretty much everybody who's in the fountain pen hobby experienced with pretty much almost every brand that they've encountered. So that's not the reason. what I think the reasons, like I said, when it comes to the actual pens, forgetting about what brand they came from, I don't dislike any of these Montblanc pens. As a matter of fact, I like every single one with a slight exception for the first 146 that I have. And when it came to the Starwalker, I even liked how the Starwalker wrote. Even though the nibs are broader than they're claimed to be, like I was saying. Like, for example, this Starwalker is a fine, but it writes like a medium. Guess what? I think Lamy is the same way when it comes to the Lamy 2000. I have an extra fine Lamy 2000 that writes like a medium Yovo nib. Pelikan, another brand, their M1000 is on par with the Montblanc 149 when it comes to cost. Of course, the material is not injection molded and is way better, but it costs about the same. Again, Pelikan is another brand that if it's fine, it writes like a lipstick. If it's extra fine, it writes like a friggin' paintbrush. But it's forgivable. And people forgive it. And people don't call it out and hate the brand because of that. But again, Pelikan is a brand that is dialed in with the fountain pen community. So, just to sum it up, what is your opinion on Montblanc? And that's a two-tiered question, and leave this in the comments below. What is your opinion on the brand? And if you have Montblanc fountain pens, what is your opinion on the fountain pen? Not the brand, but the fountain pen. I think that if we're being honest with each other, if we're being honest with ourselves, what we'll find is we like the pens for their qualities of being a pen, but we dislike the brand because the brand has absolutely no desire to connect with us, the fountain pen community. But I could be wrong. I also want to know what you guys have to say about it. A lot of times I do a podcast episode or I do a video, and then someone out there will say something. Sometimes it sounds mean, sometimes it sounds like they're being assholes. But believe me when I tell you, I am not the type that gets butt hurt very easily. I'll sometimes look at that comment and be like, I get that this person's just trying to be an asshole, but he has a point. And I really need to consider what he's saying, even though, it just doesn't feel like the best thing to do because it doesn't feed my ego. It actually challenges shit that I say or shit that I think. And it makes me think. And then on half the times, I'm like, you know what? That dude or that gal who said that mean thing because they're right. Sometimes the truth hurts. Now, I'll tell you the truth about myself. There was a point in time in my life and in my fountain pen journey where the concept of a Montblanc pen was too astronomical. But the reputation of the brand was excellent because of their name. And I couldn't be part of that name because I couldn't see myself paying the price just to be part of that name, right? So I resented them. I talked shit about them. But then eventually, my journey into the fountain pen hobby led me to pens that were on par with the price point of Montblanc, and I talked myself out of them because I talked so much shit about them before. Meanwhile, I would spend $700-800 on a peniter, Le Grand Bellezza, the first one that came out. And I was still not willing to buy the Montblanc because I kind of didn't want to be somebody who has to eat his own words. Eventually I did. And I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that I was wrong. I like all the Montblanc pens that I have. And I even tried to not like them and come up with reasons I didn't like them. But the problem with the reasons I wouldn't like my Montblanc pens would then eliminate a lot of other pens that I own as well. So I couldn't do that. So I had to sit there and really think hard about the truth of what's inside this stupid little echoey tin can I call a head. And the truth is, I resent the brand because they do nothing to connect with the fountain pen community. And they do just fine without us. And they don't care to connect with us. That kind of sucks, but I also want to think separately. How are these pens as being pens? And the answer is they are great at being pens. Unfortunately, the people making them suck at connecting with the fountain pen community and caring about the community that loves fountain pens. And sometimes I think it's possible that people out there feel a little bit in a one-way relationship. They will, like myself, I love the calligraphy pen by Montblanc. I love the other Montblanc pens that I have. But Montblanc doesn't care about me. And that causes resentment. But again, like I said, how is the pen? So that's what I want you to comment. What is your opinion on Montblanc the brand? What's your opinion on the Montblanc pen, forgetting that it's a Montblanc pen? Do you have Montblanc pens? What are your opinions on your pens? What are your opinions of the brand? And if you never thought about it, and because of this episode you are thinking about it, what is your opinion on the fact that Montblanc has zero intention of connecting with the fountain pen community? Does that in any way change your decision to buy a fountain pen from them or not? Does it change your opinion on the brand or not? I don't even know where they are in terms of who they follow on their Instagram. But I'm pretty sure if you look at it now, you can count on one hand how many people they're following. And you don't even have to count how many of those people they're following are not one of their own brands, meaning it's not another Montblanc in a different country. But I haven't checked in a while. So again, before I sign off, please put in the comments below, again, what you think of Montblanc the brand, what you think of the pen, excluding the concept that it's the Montblanc brand. Do you have Montblanc pens? And also, how do you feel about Montblanc after listening to this podcast? Does it change your opinion? Does it reinforce your opinion? Does it do nothing? I'm just curious. So anyway, that was my rant for this week. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for tuning in. This was episode number 200 of the Penboy Roy Entertainment Podcast. I love you guys. Be well. Be safe.